we've had a year of milestones, and I know that you've been really intentional about experiencing things and making it to things and all that. And so I wonder what the year has been like now that you look back at it, and what have been things that you really enjoyed the most and really kind of surprised you that you were able to take in.
No, that's a great question, Bill. And yes, when I first announced my retirement last August, if you remember, I said let's take it all in this year, right? Let's spend as much time together as we can. And looking back, it was a very rewarding year, right? We amazing cultural events or artistic events, and having an opportunity to go and watch my students excel in concerts or in poster presentations. And then, of course, a big part of that was Bobcat Athletics. Looking back, we had a wonderful Cat's Grizz game here. And for that occasion, 2 days before, I said, I think I should wear the marching band uniform. And being there on the field, right, with the students, that was quite amazing. I had no idea about the halftime song that the marching band had practiced, right, with Preciosa, which is, think about it, it's like the second national anthem for us. It's like the equivalent of America the Beautiful. Same thing, right? It's an ode to the beauty of the island and how you feel about it. And that was a surprise. And then we won that game, which always is a fantastic thing, and joining the crowd as they occupied the turf. And then going to Frisco was amazing. First of all, having over 5,000 Bobcats in the Star, that was a sea and ocean of people, and they were so happy. And the next day at the Toyota Stadium, there was no question about it, right? The majority of people there were Bobcats, and they were so happy and so proud. And that's why I have been saying since I first arrived that I love athletics so much, because it's that front porch, it's that glue that brings us together, and it builds that sense of alma mater, that this is who we are, and we're so proud. And it's been a great year.
One of your first commitments was to expand the football stadium and build the Sonny Hall and End Zone. And when you were in the process of that, I know that took a lot of sit-downs with people and meeting with people and helping the fundraising process. Could you ever have imagined what that would turn into?
No, not at all. Well, actually, before that, my first decision was to make sure that student athletes had priority registration. I felt it was very important for us not to have the student having to choose between going to practice or going to or attending a class. And so that was a way in which I wanted to make sure that we started building a very strong athletics program. When we committed to the end zone, and there were several ideas that had been thrown, right? But I thought that the end zone was going to be a great opportunity to bring all of us together. It was not without peril, because it meant that we were going to move the student section from the 50th yard, right, to the end zone. And then the question was, can we make that end zone experience so wonderful that students want to come? And look at that, right? We became one of the first universities in the nation to have electronic tickets. And now our students come, they join us, and they stay till the bitter end, shoulder to shoulder, right? They have become that additional football player that we needed in years past. And one thing built on itself, right? If you remember when we inaugurated the end zone, we started with a string of 3 Big Sky championships, which helped us in recruiting extraordinary students, and more alumni started to come back. So yeah, and now what? 2 national championships in record time. It's been fantastic.
One of my favorite things is to watch our kids celebrate a touchdown in that end zone with their peers, students
Yes.
that they go to class with all the time. you've taken so much joy in interacting with students and being around the students. Was that something that you've always enjoyed about being in higher education, or how did that manifest itself in your role as the president at
Yep.
Montana State?
I always say that everything I learned about being a president, I learned in the classroom. I did not start my career thinking that I was going to be a university president. I wanted to be a very good faculty member that cared about students, right? I fell in love with learning, and that's why I chose to go into higher education. But it could not be just learning for my own enjoyment, but trying to draw out the talents of our students. And in athletics and in those games, I found the perfect outlet to combine some of the institutional priorities, like improving student persistence, improving graduation rates, through building a sense of community, which I can do right on a Saturday afternoon. So I remember when we inaugurated the end zone, and I always walk right through the tailgate section and go to the student section, and there's this group of students, all bare-chested, right? And they're so happy. Can we have a selfie? Let's go ahead and do that. And one of them says, President Cruzado, I love it so much here. Thank you for the end zone. I never want to graduate from Montana State. And I said, no, you have to graduate.
The part of your job that you must that's so high profile is being out in the public and doing that sort of thing. But what have you enjoyed about the part of your job that is being in your office and working with people and building alliances and working with faculty and that sort of thing, working with coaches on this side of campus? What have you enjoyed about that?
Yeah, well, that's another very perceptive question, Bill, because what I love about my job is that I don't do the same thing twice in 2 consecutive days. Every day is different, right? We have so many different type of constituencies. So I can have a phone call with a state legislator followed by, a recruit that is coming to see us that day, or we need to celebrate Professor so-and-so because of an extraordinary award, or by the way, we just heard about this staff who's going through a rough time because of health issues. And what it allows us to do is to become more present in the lives of individuals here at the university and at the state level as well. You're right. One of my most favorite things is to create alliances and partnerships and leveraging resources. And what about if we do this? Could you help us with that? And I think that's why we have been so blessed with extraordinary alumni support, both in terms of dedicating their time, supporting the university through financial means. And it's because we have reached out and said, you're an important part, you're a Bobcat, we need you, can you give us a hand? And people always say yes when we ask them, can you help us?
One of the things about being at a university, a college with as much tradition as Montana State is that you realize after you've been there a while, you're kind of walking with ghosts, right? You're walking with so many people who have done your job before
Yes.
you, and also people that will come after you. So when you think back to your early days and months in your first year or two, if you had a chance to talk to someone like former President Reed or all the people that held your
Yes.
position before you, what would you have visited with them about?
Yes, that's another fantastic question. First of all, I was always in awe when I read the history about what a strong institution was Montana State ever since its foundation. Think about it, right? The state legislature approves legislation on February the 16th, 1893, establishing this university. Yes, the other university that shall remain unnamed was approved the next day. But in a matter of 4 months, we got our act together. We were imparting instruction 4 months later from a skating rink in downtown Bozeman, And what I cannot understand is we had 8 students, 3 of which were women back in the day. That is awesome, right? So, yes, the other school took its time. It took them 2 years to do that. But we had an agility, a mindset, a can-do attitude, right? A pulling ourselves by the bootstraps that I think has been very important from one president to the next. I look in awe about, Roland Rainey's time, which was a time of expansion, of growth, of new construction, and I would have loved to ask him what was that vision. And then I had the pleasure of having personal relationships with President Bill Teets and with President Gamble. So I can actually say I asked them those questions, right? Bill Teets was instrumental in making us a fully fledged research university, and that was his single focus. And Gamble was so good at establishing those relationships and enhancing the visibility of our Native American communities, for example. And then with President Malone, I established a relationship with Kathy. But more importantly, when I learned about his role in making sure that Congress passed the third land grant bill, which gave the designation of land grant institutions to our tribal colleges. So we have been blessed with extraordinary leaders, and I always knew that I was standing in the shoulders of giants. The last thing is that sense of awareness, right, about the huge burden that you carry on your shoulders every day, making sure that when you pass the baton, you're leaving the institution in a much stronger place that you found it.
Everyone that knows you says you're a very competitive person.
I am.
But your competitive nature shines through in a very positive way that focuses on progress.
Yep.
And not the kind of competitive that we always live with in athletics. Mm-hmm. How have you sort of bridged that gap between your positive competitiveness and the sort of win today, win all the time mentality that has to kind of take the day in athletics?
Well, I think it comes from the realization that we're privileged to be in public higher education. Because look what we were called to do. We were called to educate the sons and daughters of the working families of America. We were called to strengthen democracy. So every day I want to make sure, right, when we talk about the size or the growth in student enrollment, deep down, my plan is to make sure that every citizen in the state can feel that this is their university and that they had a shot in life. More specifically, when I arrived, though, we have always been a great school, but I noticed that we were kind of subdued about our accomplishments, right? Like, we didn't want to call attention to ourselves, maybe a little bit about research. And I remember having a conversation in my office with Shelley McCamey, then director of the Museum of the Rockies. And I was like, Shelley, but why don't we toot our horn more? And she said, President Cruzado, in Montana, we don't polish our boots. And we don't polish anybody else's boots either, right? And I said, but we have something very good. So let's toot our horn, right? And let's talk about greatness, and let's talk about prosperity. And that will engender even more positive things. And so starting with the Bobcat merchandise, I remember my first year here, when I went to Costco and there were no blue and gold Bobcat merchandise, but there was the other school. I said, can I talk to the store manager? And I said, well, right, those little things, because it cannot be just win for win's sake, right? I love our student athletes winning because that builds character, because we only get to see a portion of their accomplishment, but we don't get to see all the sacrifices they make. Likewise for our students and our faculty, they work so hard, and our staff. So let's make sure that the whole world knows how good we are, what a great institution we have, and that's where it comes.
One of my favorite moments of the year was the Hall of Fame ceremony.
Yeah.
where we inducted another great class, as we always do, and it's always a really fun, emotional night. And at the very end, we announced next year's inductees, of which you're one. What do you remember about that night? But more importantly, projecting that forward, what do you think your legacy is at this school, including athletics, but more overarching?
But I remember that night, as you said, it's a very emotional night because I have been here now for a considerable amount of years, and I know people. And I know the people that we were recognizing, right? And I know about their greatness, and more importantly, I know what superb human beings they are. And so that really touched me incredibly. But the other thing I remember is I was totally clueless about Leon's announcement, and that I was really dumbfounded and so humbled to even being disoriented. And the only fleeting thought that crossed my mind was, great, I'll get to come back next year and I'll get to see everybody else. As for the legacy, I think that's for others to say. I can just tell you what I tried to do, what I woke up every morning, right, and came to the office, always happy, always excited about the job at hand, always exciting about climbing another hill and conquering another seemingly impossible accomplishment, just for the sake of the people who we serve. That's the part that we cannot lose sight of. When I guide some new presidents, I always tell them, you cannot do this job because of the title or the money, because quite honestly, you're not here to be served. The title is to a call for service to others. And the money, if you do this with passion, you're going to devote every waking minute of your life. So there's no salary, there's no compensation that can pay for that. What the compensation comes, the rewards come in the satisfaction of helping people realize their dreams, of knowing that you're providing them with an education, with the means, with the relationships that will last a lifetime, that will allow them to be competent professionals, committed citizens, and hopefully happy and healthy human beings. That's the legacy. If we have had one student feel that way, then the job has been accomplished.
Well, it's been an honor to be here through your entire presidency. It's an honor to say thank you for all the amazing work that you've done, and it's been a lot of fun, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's the part, right? And thank you, Bill. It's been wonderful to work with you, as you said, since day one. And we can never forget that it's been a joy. It's been a joy. When we look back, right, and we say, wow, it's amazing all the wonderful things that we accomplished together. Montana State University will always be in my life. Montana is home. And I love this place. I love these people. And I know that the best days of our university are still ahead of us. Go Cats!
Go Cats!